It has been a little over 24 hours since the Minister for Finance appeared before Parliament to present to them what was described as a killer budget by some section of the Ghanaian populace. Today we are talking about the increment on what everyone is using of today's market. Today, everything has to do with a mobile phone. We use the mobile phone for our social media, for phone calls, basically everything. And there was a 50% increment on that. Initially, we were paying 6%. Now it has been increased to 9%. So what it means is that if you have a mobile phone, every single phone call that you make, the government of Ghana is now taxing you 10% out of the time spent talking on that mobile phone. But before we discuss everything in details here on the feed, let's take a look at what has been trending on social media today.
The trending news today, Legon and KNUST have been trending at number 1 and 2 respectively, with each institution trying to show off who is best when it comes to tertiary institutions in the country. Kwachua tweeted, "I chose KNUST over Legon because I didn't want to be infected with HIV." Sharif responded, "Scopa Tumana." The general also tweeted, "Until Bank of Ghana put up your school on Ghana's currency, please and please don't compare your SHS #KNUST to the University of Ghana #Legon." Makuto the general also added, "It's funny how these KNUST students ranting about how good their school is, but just Google the top 100 universities in Africa and see where they are. SMH, Asshole School, #Legon." Ghanaian music producer Apia Dankwa, popularly known in showbiz as Apietus, has also been at number 4 on the trends this morning when rumors broke out that he supposedly gave musician Kwesé 20 CDs after he had shorted fuel. This, Amiel Debra tweeted but mistakenly mentioned Sarkodie's name instead of Apietus and received a reply from the king of success music, which reads, "I'm not sure he mentioned my name, bro. That ends my song and I didn't make a penny off that either. Call the owner. Shouts to the brother, Kwesé." Wiz Porter also tweeted on that saying, "Kwesé said, and I quote, he shorted fuel and Apietus gave him 20 CDs, not Sarkodie. Let's not tarnish images like that. In as far as you are blogging, let's not lead people wrongly. Publish what exactly was said and not just cause of your money you want to get for traffic." Now, the mid-year budget, which was presented to Parliament yesterday, has also been at number 9 this morning with #killer tax budget. Elikem EK Kotoko tweeted, #killer tax budget. New taxes introduced, old ones increased, but our salaries will remain same. If you're a Ghanaian and you call this a positive change you voted for, wala o wala. #CTCBS. Engineer Paul Aforte Kwe also tweeted, "Akufo-Addo is breaking down new buildings to construct a cathedral. He's wasting our taxes only to turn around and ask for more. #killer tax budget." Abena Owusu also tweeted, "Where are the jobs we were promised? Where are the roads we were promised? Plug in the loopholes. What happened? This is certainly not the change we voted for. #killer tax budget." These and many more were in the trends today. Stay tuned for more.
And not only those on social media were saying this, but our audience here on KWESÉ feed were also saying this. Someone, TJ, he actually tweeted that the same old story that we were suffering, the same old story the suffering under Nana Akufo-Addo administration is worse than Ebola virus. That one came from TJ. And Scarebread, he says, another outrageous budget. #KWESÉ feed. And now we come into the studio and talk about the government of Ghana decision to increase the communication service tax to 9% from the initial 6%. The finance minister, Mr Ofori-Atta, announced the increment in Parliament yesterday when he presented the mid-year budget. Mr Ofori-Atta told the lawmakers that the communication service tax was introduced in 2008 at valorem rate of 6%. The tax is levied on charges payable by consumers for the use of communication services. Government proposes to increase the tax to 9% to develop the foundation for the creation of a viable technology ecosystem in the country. This will comprise, amongst other things, inputting systems to identify and combat cybercrime. That is what was told by the finance minister who appeared before Parliament yesterday. In studio with me to do the discussion this evening is David Battles, who is a freelance journalist, who will also be joined on the phone by a tax partner of PwC, Mr. Abeku Jan Kwanzaa. He will be speaking to us about some of the impact this taxes increment will have on the decision making of these communication institutions and what it will have to do with the telecom sector entirely. Before I speak to Mr. Abeku Jan Kwanzaa, let me ask David. David, as a consumer of mobile phone, like someone who uses mobile phone, as a consumer of most of the telecom networks we have in this country, what sort of impact would the 50% increment have on you?
Well, I think it's obvious that it's going to be very expensive for all of us. Already, I think somewhere last year, in November, there was a new tax law which actually made us pay 5% on every phone call we made. If you remember, that was in November.
Somewhere in November last year, if I do remember very well.
We complained,
and even these telecoms themselves actually made the increment.
Yes, they did, because they said it's a new tax law, so they had to also put the tax on the consumer to pay. And this is another thing. In just less than 7 months, now we're going to pay extra. We are going to pay more. It's making things expensive. Already things are already expensive, and now the phone that we use is also going to be expensive. I think it's too much. Like we always say, it's too much.
50% is too much?
It is, of course. It's too much. You make a call, and in 2 minutes, you have 1 minute remaining. I mean, it's not interesting at all.
Let me go on the phone and speak to Abeku Jan Kwanzaa. Good evening for joining us here on the feed, Mr. Jan.
Hi, good evening, and good evening to those in the studio and to your listeners.
Thanks very much for joining us here. First of all, you have heard the stories about how Finance Minister is saying that there's going to be a 50% increment on talk tax. First of all, this increment, what sort of impact would it have on you as a consumer before we generalize it on the telcos themselves?
Well, obviously, an increase in the communication service tax, and I would appreciate if, for the purpose of this discussion, we call it a communication service tax and just a talk tax, because the scope goes beyond just using it for talking, okay?
Okay.
The obvious impact is that this would obviously lead ordinarily to an increase in the price that one would have to pay if you want to consume the same amount of communication service that you were previously consuming. Alternatively, if you want to keep the amount that you spend on communication services fixed, then of course, just as your colleague in the studio just talked about, what you'd realize is that the duration or the amount of, say, data that you have for communication services would reduce. So in brief, the impact would be either or a combination of a reduction in the amount of communication service that you previously had, or an increase in the amount that you need to spend. Let me quickly add that my understanding is that the bill for this to take effect has been laid in Parliament today.
Yes.
Because this is a matter of tax, the minister's proposal or the proposal made on behalf of the president remains a wish until those you and I voted for actually passes it.
Okay, now let's look at this. How will this influence the decision making of these telcos, knowing very well that less than 7 months ago, they sent out text messages to most of their customers indicating that there was going to be an increase in these taxes?
All right. So once again, because I guess a lot of people are listening to you, I want us to appreciate the scope of this tax, okay?
Okay.
The scope of this tax goes beyond just the telcos. It applies on anyone, all right,
okay,
who is in general making communication services or providing communication services.
Okay.
So if you pick, say, your TV station, for instance,
yes,
if you pick the telcos, anyone that is regulated under what we call the Electronic Communications Act of 2008
yes,
is required to charge the 6% communication service tax, which is expected to go to 9%. All right?
Okay.
So having established the scope of this tax, that it goes beyond just the telecos and applies to anyone that is making a public supply of communication services, I would proceed as follows. One, if the communication service providers' customers do not want to increase the amount that is spent on communication services,
okay,
then obviously what will happen is that the impact of the increase in tax would obviously reduce the revenues that are available to the communication service provider.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Because let me give an example. If previously you were spending in a month 10 cedis on scratch cards, okay?
Okay.
Then what this actually means is that if you break down the numbers, the revenue that would have been due to the communication service provider was about 7.8 out of the 10.
Yes.
And then the balance of about almost 2.2 cedis was the built-up of taxes made up of communication service tax, the National Health Insurance Levy, the Guest Fund Levy, and the VAT.
Yes.
So if I take a decision as a customer not to increase how much I spend on communication, then what it means is that the revenues that will be attributable to the communication service provider, for example, the telecom provider, should reduce.
Okay.
The consequence of that is that the corporate income tax that they also pay will drop. And because they pay a 5% national fiscal stabilization levy, in addition to the general income tax of 25, that would also drop.
Okay, I'll come back to you, but let me come back to the studio to speak to David. You heard him mention, interestingly, about how this is not just something that has to do with the telecos, but us as a TV station that also provides electronic communication across, we are also affected. So what do you think our decision making would look like? And how does that affect our customers who patronize us?
Well, I would say that this is a tax,
yes,
which is on all telcos.
Yes.
Yeah, but my problem is the telcos. I think they're not doing enough to make all these things stop. I mean, with the taxes.
Yes.
In the sense that, now, what did the minister say? He said that the increment is to generate enough fund.
Yes.
To be able to combat cybercrime.
Yes.
And then expand,
and protect users' information and technology.
Exactly. And then expand telecom in the country.
Yes.
What are the telcos doing for themselves? They provide us with the services.
Yes.
What are they doing? How much? And at what
and
place are they doing?
who owns the system that they are using? If I own the system, I decide how you use it.
Exactly. But what are they also doing to expand?
What must they do? What should they do?
Cybercrime.
What should they do?
I remember 4 months ago, there was a forum.
Yes.
Where most stakeholders were on a roundtable discussion to see how to combat cybercrime and other things. Do you realize that the telco companies didn't show up?
Shouldn't there be a national interest to have cybercrime perfectly combated by everyone, knowing very well that if you are going to leave this only on the telcos, chances are that they might not be able to get it done.
No, but when you give your SIM cards to agents anyhow to register pre-registered SIM card to customers,
yes,
where it gives room for these fraudsters to use
Let's not
these
also
things.
forget, even before that, our SIM cards were not registered.
Exactly. But as time goes on and as we develop this technology to be able to register, what are they doing to regulate this registration?
They were asked to regulate it.
Yes, but
so what should they do to regulate it?
Of course, they need to regulate their agents. All these guys who they give their SIM card to register to people. how much education do they put them through to be able to do it effectively?
David, hold on the how much do they hold on. Please don't truncate, don't format those thoughts. Let me go on social media and read some comments that are coming in from our viewers out there. TJ says, increment of tax in communication will make me rely on chatting with friends and family in the form of communication rather than verbal communication. That's what he's saying. And Miss Nyakwa, she says, I don't get it. Does increment bring any good impact? Question feed. That's what she's asking. And Abrantier, he's saying, if they increase, we will stop making phone calls so that their family members will suffer it alone. Hashtag question feed. You cannot stop making phone calls. And Siddiq Ahmed, he says that let's first ask what they use those taxes for. We can't be throwing our monies away in the name of tax. We'll go for a break. When we come back, we still have Mr. Abeku Kwansa on the phone and David Battles in the studio. They will continue to educate us on the impact of this increment of taxes on talk tax that was presented to Parliament or proposed to Parliament yesterday by the Finance Minister. We'll be back in a jiffy.
It's deadly insect. It makes the whole family unrest, especially at night. But worry no more, cause the revolutionary Abro Super Blast mosquito spray. It travels fast, works fast, and with a very good fragrance, accommodating mild and tender smell. That's Abro Super Blast Insecticide Spray. Distributed by Coast Ghana Limited, Sprinters Road, Motorway, Accra, Ghana. Abro, trusted name worldwide.
Anyone who ever pushed me to go further. One more. To those who work together to set the bar higher. To those who give me the energy to go further. This is my team, and my team makes me.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Thanks for sticking and staying with us here on Kwesé TV. This is the feed with me, Muftawu, Nabila, Abdulai. Just gone by, we were talking about the impact of the increment of communication taxes that will have on you as a consumer. And on the phone with us this evening is Mr. Abeku Kwansa, and in studio we have David Battles, who is a freelance journalist. Mr. Abeku Kwansa, he's a tax partner with PwC. Let me get on the phone again to speak to Mr. Abeku. Just before we went for the break, you had heard David mention that most of these communication institutions we have in the country are not doing enough to combat one of the things that was mentioned by the Finance Minister. And the key thing he mentioned here was cybercrime. How necessary is it for us or for the state to come back to the citizenry and pick these taxes to combat these crimes?
All right. In responding to your question, I would want us to put into perspective how we are performing generally as far as our tax revenue budget was concerned.
That's a good one.
Now, based on what the minister presented, as at the end of June, our projections against what we had programmed to collect was a shortfall of close to 2 billion cedis. Okay?
Yes.
So the issue then is, apart from just that 2 billion, if you look at the budget review that was done,
Yes.
actually we have missed out on all the revenue projections, ranging for some even going as much as about 60% deficits, especially on grants. So the question is, if government recognizes the issue of cybercrime as a threat, all right, the question then is, how do I deal with this threat? And as your colleague in the studios mentioned, if it is believed that the current communication service providers are not doing enough, and government thinks that I ought to address this, then obviously government will come back to you and I in order to raise the amount needed for this. Remember, in any case, is this a long-term sustainable measure, the continuous increase in taxes? Obviously not. But in the short term, it may be the way to go in order to tackle these issues that government considers as a threat to our economy.
Just before I come back to the studio, I want to follow up on this. You, as a tax specialist, you should understand some of these things relating to how to meet your targets relating to taxes. What did we not do right to ensure that we get the taxes we were looking for, and now we are coming back to review it and increase some and put it on the entire citizenry? What did we not do right?
All right. So interestingly, what did we not do right was also identified by the minister. Historically, we have not done too well on plans that we set out to do and actually carrying on to do that.
What must we do right,
so some
please?
of these plans include, one, the fact that we're going to get what is called an electronic point of sale device installed. So what it means is that if you go and deal with anyone that is required to charge you VAT, okay?
Yes.
As soon as that person charges you that VAT, the Ghana Revenue Authority at the close of the day should have a record that indeed VAT has been collected. So that if at the end of the period, the VAT that is submitted by someone registered for VAT is short of what the GRA expects, certain questions can be asked. And up until now, that has not been done. In the budget for 2018, for instance, government also promised that there was going to be a mechanism to deal with tax disputes, so that if you and I are arguing something against the GRA on a tax that has been so imposed on us, we can resolve those issues on a timely basis and remit that amount of money to the state.
Okay.
But that has still not been done. Government also expected that the taxpayers identification numbering system, for example, what we call the TIN, would have gotten to a certain level so that a lot of taxpayers can be identified and followed to ensure that their proper income tax have been paid, but that has also not been done. So government themselves recognizes that so many measures that we planned to do, which has not been done, has contributed to why we are having challenges in meeting our revenue targets. So we need as a country to commit to achieving the things that we set out in our national budget.
Let me come back to the studio. David, you heard him mentioned about how the Ghana Revenue Authority should be alert to know that if a certain payment is made, they should know that this payment is made and they follow up for your taxes. Why haven't they been able to get this done successfully?
Well, I think this is Ghana.
Yes.
And
this is Ghana shouldn't be an anthem.
Well, but that is what it is. I'm a realist and I see things the way they are.
How are they? How are those things are?
Our institutions have a big problem.
And what is that problem?
Of course, effectiveness. They don't work properly. They have issues.
What must they do to work properly?
Do your job. Those who are supposed to do their job are supposed to do their job effectively. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Yes, if everybody is doing their job very well, then I think some of these issues won't be going on. But the problem is that sometimes because of politics and because, like I said, this is
politics
Ghana
for us to miss our revenue target?
Of course, Ghana, yes. We politicize, apparently we politicize.
How then do we have a better country as we seek for if the person who is supposed to collect the taxes due to politics is not able to meet some of these targets?
Yes, rule of law. Let the law work. Let people do their job effectively. If everybody is going to do their job, if you're doing your job, I'm doing my job, the person at the Ghana Revenue Authority is doing their job, then everything is going to work perfectly.
But Let me go to Abeku in this. Mr. Abeku, you've realized that, or there's always been this accusation of how people try to manipulate the system and dodge the way of paying some of these taxes. As someone who is specialized in this area, what must we do to ensure that some of these people don't dodge paying taxes?
All right. Now, what I'm going to share with you, and probably that I hope would even guide the communication going forward, is what as PwC we have developed and called the research framework. So
research.
The journalist in your
Take that again.
The research framework, and I'm going to explain what that means.
Okay.
And of course, your other panelists in the studio did mention that this is Ghana. So we are saying we need to reset Ghana, all right? So the very first thing is that the public needs to be reassured that the public purse is being protected. In other words, the mere saying that I am fighting corruption, the mere saying that I am going to deal with revenue shortfall, the mere fact that I say that I'm going to expand the tax net is not sufficient. We need to reassure the public that indeed these things that we are saying, we would do them. The second thing that we would share, which is the E in the research, because the first is R, the second is E, is to educate the populace. I mean, ignorance of the law is obviously no excuse, but it's appearing that in Ghana, ignorance of the law is an excuse. So as a media person, you would have probably heard in the past where certain groups in this country said they ought to be educated on their tax responsibilities before they can comply with the tax laws. Obviously, that is not right, but hey, that is what is happening. So can we reduce the extent of quote-unquote ignorance by increasing the education that we give to the citizenry on what I call their Article 41 responsibility is, which is that everyone should honestly disclose their tax obligations. The third one, which we'll share with you, is the S in the research framework, which is dealing with the systems. So must I always travel to the tax office to pay and file my tax returns? How easy can I file and do this online? I should say credit goes to the GRA. This year they have launched an online platform where you can file your income tax online. The whole thing is that it ought to be encouraged, and we need to get to where the Vice President says we should get so that we can even pay our taxes comfortably using mobile money or other electronic platforms.
Okay.
The next is the enforcement, which is the other E. If you fault the tax law and you are not punished, probably it encourages me also to do the same. But if I realize that an example has been made of you, I would comply. So irrespective of your standing in society, everyone is made to follow the law as it ought to be. So for example, from 2016, every Ghanaian is required to file an income tax return, irrespective of the fact that you may be earning all your income from employment. The natural question is how many people are really complying and what has been done to those who did not comply. And then the last one, which I would say is about trust, which is the T in the research framework. Now, the question is, do governments really trust the citizens that they are honoring their tax obligations as well as they ought to? And is the citizen really sure that, look, if I pay an additional 50% in communication service tax, how well will my money be used? So if you ask what solution do we propose, we are proposing a simple solution called the research framework, where R is reassure us, E means educate us, S means let the systems work, E means enforce it, and trust should also be existent. We believe that if we follow this through, we would closely get to the Ghana that you and I would be proud of.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abeku Jan Kwanzaa. He is a tax partner with PwC. We appreciate your time here on the feed with us. Let me come back to the studio. David, just wrap up for me on this issue. He has given us what the PwC is proposing, and that he believes that when there's a trust between the citizenry and the person who is coming for my tax, then we'll finally find a solution to this. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. If there's going to be rule of law and everyone is going to do their job, as I stated earlier, then I think that will be a way forward for all of us. And I remember when Mr. Kofi Bidiako of the Ghana Standard Authority, he actually even charged the media to question the telcos as to why they didn't show up at the roundtable meeting. See,